remember cable TV back in the day?
Yeah.
Versus Netflix today?
Yeah.
Like Netflix turned on, just kind of knows what you want to watch. Why shouldn't that be in restaurants? Why shouldn't the server, of course, know your name and then know what on this menu you're going to care about, like what your allergies are, what your preferences are, and then use that to actually recommend stuff. Like if you were building a restaurant today, imagine no restaurants existed, we wouldn't build it like this given the tech we have today.
Totally.
Right? Let's go look at your demand patterns. Let's go look at the weather. Anytime you've got slots open, what are ways in which we can fill those, whether it's for delivery or pickup or in store, because they've got all these fixed costs. Restaurants are one of the few categories where there's like no concept of like how to think about yield.
Welcome to Grit. I'm Joubin, partner at Kleiner Perkins, a show where we go beyond the highlight reel and explore the personal and professional challenges of building history-making companies. Today on the show, we have Aman Narang, co-founder and CEO of Toast. Toast started as a mobile-first payments company and has now become the operating system for restaurants across basically every facet of their business. We talk about what it was like in the early days, stepping into the CEO role, and what the future of the business looks like. Enjoy. This episode was recorded back on February 3rd. How big is Toast now? How many, what's the market cap-ish?
About 20 billion.
20 billion.
Yeah.
20 billion. Probably one of the biggest companies in Boston.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's like you, DraftKings.
HubSpot. There's a
HubSpot.
bunch. In tech, I would say probably now. I think over the years, there's actually not been as many, I think, in Boston, maybe.
TripAdvisor.
I think outside tech, there's a bunch of biotech and other categories, but in tech, I agree. Yeah.
Did it ever cross your mind to be like, all right, should we because you at some point, you're big enough where you could just be a sponsor, you could do the cool, big company things.
What do you mean?
I don't know, sponsored, I don't know, try and get the naming rights to their jerseys or something, I don't know, do something with Toast and the Patriots. I don't know, do something cool, do some cool big company, rich company thing, put your logos on some cool stuff,
No.
Never?
Not really. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it goes back to who we are. We're fundamentally a B2B company. We have aspirations to be a B2C company one day, but we're a B2B company. Yeah. And so that's just not the best use of capital. I also grew up in a household where, being frugal and doing more with less is a big part of my DNA. And so, so I'm actually, the team always gives me a hard time because they think I'm always too frugal in general.
Give me an example.
I've gotten better, I'd say now, but for years I'd hated paying for parking. And so we were going out not anymore, but for years, be like, oh, we could just find a parking spot on the street. Nicole's like, we need to go to this dinner. We're going to be late. Like, no, give me 2 more minutes. So that's one example.
Where'd you grow up?
I was born in India.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a bunch of places in India. My dad worked for a company that got posted a few areas, but I was there till 7. Then my dad built this business in Nepal, actually. And so I was there from when I was maybe 8, actually, to when I was 13. And then I moved to upstate New York, Rochester, New York, when I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there in high school and moved to Boston for college.
Are your parents still around?
Yeah, they actually live next door.
Come on.
My parents live next door. Yeah. And we've shared driveway, and my kids see them every day. Absolutely.
No way. So you bought the place next door for them?
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer this, but how did your partner feel about that? Your in-laws are dangerously close.
You've seen the show Somebody Loves Raymond?
Everybody loves Raymond.
Everybody
loves Raymond.
It's funny because we had Phil Rosenthal do our kickoff this year, just a few weeks back in Orlando, and he's got another show called Somebody Feed Phil. So it was just that he talks like a food show.
Okay. So
he was there, and so in that show you've got Raymond, you've got the parents next door, and you've got the brother, right, who's around a lot. And that's our family. It's exactly that.
Come on.
Yeah, but it's great. It's great. My brother's also in tech. He's been there. He's 10 years older than me. He's in tech for a long time. And so it's nice to compare notes with him and get perspective. And then Nicole, I think I'm lucky to be, one of the things and I'm sure many people have talked to you about this, but one of the best things that's happened to me is I've just been very fortunate, maybe as I've been smart too, but to just be surrounded with good people. And with Nicole, that's the case.
Your wife?
Yeah, 100%. That's my wife. Yep. And my parents, I think, were really selfless. I mean, most parents are really, and my mom especially, you know how selfless she was as we grew up. It was just about us. And then even with Steve and John, my co-founders, and really the team around us, like one of the best parts about one of the things that's been, I think I've been blessed with, is just been lucky to be with good people.
When how old were you when you bought the house for your parents? How long into Toast?
2019.
Okay.
So
So company was
7 years.
almost public or public, almost public at
I'm
that
public
point?
in 21.
21.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
just before.
yeah, yeah.
How surreal was that for them growing up in India? Like having their son buy the house next door. It's probably like not an ugly house either. Like
Yeah,
having the son buy the house next door.
yeah.
That was a bit cool.
I think it was more about being close. You know, I think if you look at India in general,
Yeah.
and obviously, like, you know, I moved here when I was a kid, and so I was 13 years old, and so, you know, it's many ways like, you know, I think your experience in high school also really shapes you and who you are, and so many ways I left India when I was 7 or 8, so it's like, you're not quite like, you know, like the Indian culture shaped me down as a little kid, but not really when I was through adulthood. And, and my wife obviously is from here, and so, for them, I think one of the challenges when they were considering moving here, they came here a lot later. Actually, we can talk about that if you want. But when they first moved here, one of the big questions was like, "Hey, like they were 65. My dad was 65. My mom was 60 when they moved here. Like, how are they going to settle and assimilate?" And and um, and they've actually done an amazing job. Like now, they're bigger parties. They're busier and they have more parties than we do, like quite a lot.
You're like
Yeah.
texting him at 11 p.m. like, hey, turn the music down.
Yeah, well, not music, but they've got cars blocking our driveway sometimes. But in Indian culture, it's very common, right? Like to have multi-generational households where you've got like, let's say, like a home, like imagine like 3 floors, and like the brother might live on one floor, or the parents might live on one floor, and another sibling might live on another floor. And so having that proximity was something that they deeply valued.
Hmm.
And of course, they never brought it up to me, but I knew that's something that would mean a lot. And I think it's been amazing. Like my son now, Noah, he's got in many ways a better relationship. It's not like he's almost closer to my dad than he is to me sometimes.
That's
I
really
feel
cool.
like, yeah,
That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah, yeah. They're really into like somehow he's gotten into he's like a good chess player now because of my dad, and then into or like and then bridge and a bunch of stuff that they like to do, and now he does it with them. It's kind of funny to
That's
watch.
awesome.
Yeah.
Do you like there's this weird thing in Silicon Valley where you're not supposed to say that you started a company for money? Like it's like this taboo thing
Yeah.
where you're like it has to be about the mission,
Yeah.
you know?
No.
And anything less than that is just like not a pure intent.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, like if you come from nothing and you're like starting a company, it was your second company. Like, I don't know, can't it like aren't you allowed to like also have some motivation that's like, yeah, I want to like make money for my family?
100%.
Like that's fair, right?
Of course.
Okay.
And I think that that's true for most people.
But do you agree with me that it's like this weird thing that you're like not allowed to say like, "Oh yeah, I like started a company to like make money." Like when did that become not okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just remember actually one of the things that was interesting when we got going was back to being frugal. One of the things that Steve and I always struggled with, and he was more right and I was more wrong, was, we grew up in a world of low interest rates and cheaper capital. And I remember I'd sit with him, at dad, of course, he grew up like, and he'd push me on this. And it'd be some conversation, something along the lines of like, hey, like, isn't the point of a business at some point to also make money? Because we were burning cash as we were scaling and growing. And so yeah, absolutely. I think you want to build a business. I think in order to, it's like anything else, in order to be good at something and be successful, that can't be your primary motivation and the only motivation. It's got to be that like you've got to be really good at whatever you know you do, and that ultimately is what drives the financial outcome. And I think it's the same thing with business, where you've got to get in and want to actually solve the problems that are worth solving because it's competitive and it's hard. And of course, if the byproduct is that it, is successful, that's great.
And Steve, your co-founder, you guys worked together at the previous startup that you were at?
Yeah. So I remember I met Steve, I think 2006, summer 2006, just graduated, and his first job, first, like, there's done some internship, but first real job. And I remember it was this company called Endeca, and I showed up, and the first day ever, right, at this place, like it was like noon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, midnight. Like nobody on the team had left. Because there was this team that I joined where it was called Special Operations, and that was e-commerce. And this team's I didn't really know what I'd got myself into. This team's job was to go figure out how to break new ground with this platform beyond e-commerce in other verticals and other segments. And so they were like basically building a startup within Endeca. And so that's where I met Steve. And I've kind of like worked with him through like it's kind of crazy. I feel like I've worked with him throughout my professional career. Like he's been on this, maybe I'm wrong about this, but except maybe a quarter or two here and there, we've kind of worked together for like, I don't know, 2 decades now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And like, maybe like he's the technical one in air quotes.
Actually, we had a third founder, John, who was, John and Steve are both, the proverbial 10X engineers.
Yeah.
And just, I'd say John was the CTO, the one who really helped us build and scale this platform.
And John was also at this startup?
Yes.
Okay.
John was, we used to joke around that Steve and I, we were entrepreneurial, and Steve was more technical than me, but, I was also
You went to MIT.
building, yeah. That's not always means you're actually effective technically.
That's fair, but it's a bar.
Yeah, fair.
It's a bar.
Fair. And anyways, we were tinkering and building, and I would joke around that we would always take John's foundational capabilities and build on top and productize these things. So John was really like the one who helped us scale. Steve is like, very much, I'd say, very deeply passionate about innovation. So as much as engineering, he also cares deeply about like, how are we going to innovate and make an impact? And he always is thinking very big and bold, like, and pushing us in terms of like, where's the industry going and why, how can we lead? And so I think sometimes I'm maybe more of the pragmatist in terms of trying to figure out how do you balance everything to have a roadmap that makes sense.
What do you think about the 3-person founding configuration? Like, I have been incubating a company here at
I heard,
KP, and we're making good progress. There's
fixing CPQ, right? That's what I heard. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
it's worth fixing.
Yeah, it's probably terrible in your company if I had to guess.
It's hard to build on top of Salesforce.
It's impossible.
That's the one learning. Yeah,
it's impossible.
Yeah,
it's just an old legacy platform. And, when you have thousands of AEs trying to like get deals done, and like the underlying system is like stuck in loading screen hell for 30 minutes because it's like can't get from one page to another because the architecture is like 50 years old.
Yeah. I think for us, the hard part has also been like, we started in SMB and then we grew up into mid-market enterprise. We grew into international. So all the growth in these different segments, expanding the platform, that's where it's gotten hard. Because you've got like down market, you want to power e-commerce, but then you've also got like enterprise sales is very different. And then going to international markets, that has its own needs, and like making all that work. I think part of it is what's been hard for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's also why our like sweet spot, like we're going into the belly of the beast, which is like public tech companies. Like that's where we're starting because you're not unique. Like, meaning you start to get to the point where SKUs proliferate a lot. Then you have like a bunch of people banging on the system.
Right.
Then you're like down market and up market. Then you have like AEs as you go up market that are trying to do deals that are more complex.
Right.
Then you have a brand new set of AEs that have no idea how to do those deals.
Right.
So then they're calling everybody. That should all be like systematized.
Right.
Then inevitably they get frustrated. They just go into a spreadsheet and just show a customer a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Then they go into like approval hell.
Yeah.
Where like they change one little thing and then it gets kicked down to the bottom of the thread, right? And that problem times a bunch of volume, right, starts to become quite cumbersome.
I have a story about approval hell. We have like, when we were trying to grow and scale, we're like, we got to get more disciplined. And we created all these rules about who approves what. And we went to one day and looked at all this data, and it's like 99.9% of the time, everything gets approved. Like, why are we doing this?
because your frontline managers, like the sales managers, are like, yep, approve, of course, of course.
Yeah, not at all the way up the chain, actually. Like,
everything got approved.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I think like what I've learned along the way is you're way better off giving teams a little bit more autonomy to say these are the guardrails and constraints that drive like the comp plan or the quota or whatever it may be, versus because that can slow you down. And like in business and go to market, especially, the time is really important. Like speed is important. And so especially in SMB.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, back to like that resonates.
Yeah. So anyway, I was kind of curious about the 3-person configuration.
Yeah.
Like I'm living the 3-person configuration. I really like it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like what were the pros and cons of it? Now it's probably matters less.
Yeah.
But then,
I mean, the thing that was best was we were fairly complementary. And, I was more on, like, I'd say product and go to market. That's, like, where I got the most energy. And I remember Steve was, I'd say, innovation and product, um, much more technical, obviously. And Steve and John, I'd say, probably built the bulk of the platform. And then the technologist. And so I think as long as people are complementary and you've got folks that are very good, because like often you've issues with commitment, right? If you've got bigger teams, alignment commitments. So we just didn't have that. We'd known each other for 6 or 7 years before. And, just good people, like, guess back to what I said earlier. I think that that's what is important more than whether it's 2 or 3 or in fact, for us, like, we don't talk about this enough, but it was actually almost like a founding core group. Like, we very early on, this guy, Chen, who joined us, and he was at HBS, while we were, like, in my basement. And he interned at HBS my basement, getting this thing off the ground. And he was very instrumental in, like, helping us find product market fit and, like, practically a founder. Steve's brother, Tim, was actually, an engineer at Endeca, and he was our first, I'd say, first key hire, engineering hire. And even the first, like, a lot of these folks, like, we all built this together. It wasn't just about the 3 of us.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get the first product out into the wild?
Well, the story, so maybe to back up a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like the summer of 2012, we, um Oracle had just bought Endeca, and, we'd seen this company kinda when we joined, it was a couple 100 people. It grew and scaled. We'd seen, like, we'd worked on this team, special ops, trying to build new products. In fact, when the iPhone came out, Steve and I built Endeca's mobile business that was
Cool.
successful. And so we're like, now's a good time to go explore, like, what's next. And so we we're this is like not this is like 2012, 2012. And so it wasn't like, unlike '08 with the mobile phone or mobile or like, with cloud earlier, like this was not as obvious, like what we should go build. Like now, for example, AI, there's all these AI companies,
Yeah.
right, that are spawned up. And so we used to meet at this place downstairs, well, called Firebrand Saints. It was, like, across the street from MIT Sloan School is where our office was, and we'd meet, like, once or twice a week, and we'd talk about, like, ideas and brainstorm things, and kinda didn't get anywhere for, like, a couple months. And then, um, I don't forget who it was, but, like, one of the things we picked up on was, like, oh, like, when we were ready to leave, this place was a busy outdoor patio. It's like a big restaurant bar, outdoor patio. Took us, like, 20 minutes to leave. Right? And we wanted to just go home. And so one of us said, like, "What about as a fun project? What if we just built, like it's that you could use your phone to just leave?"
20 minutes to like close out the tab and get
Yeah,
out of
because 'cause
there.
they're just busy and they don't have
Yeah,
staff,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's funny, this is a big part of value proposition today. It's funny how these things come
yeah.
around. And so we started off by building this app where you could use your phone to, like, check out, basically. That was the core use case. And, um, and I remember, like, when we were talking about building this business, Steve and John were like, "Let's go quit and build this." And I'm like, "I'm not quitting." I'd worked on, enterprise software at Endeca, and this just seemed crazy to me at the time. Like, what are we gonna build, like, a checkout app experience for SMB restaurants? And so they actually quit, and I was helping them nights and weekends to get going. But, um, one thing and we got no traction. So the first, like, I'd say year or so.
Year.
Yeah, probably, like, maybe 9 months, no traction
Oh,
on
a
this.
long time.
Yeah. And we were trying to basically I mean, it took us, you get an idea, it takes you 3 to 4 months to get
At least to
get
get
get a
V0.
product out
Yeah, at
there
least.
with customers. But the thing we realized with this app was most of, the industry, right? Because we got to know restaurateurs in Boston and Cambridge, and they were using these systems to run their businesses that were, like, built in the '90s, or they were, like, on-premise systems with physical hardware, like a server in your basement. They didn't have connectivity, right, with APIs, so we couldn't build. That was, like, the biggest blocker. We couldn't scale this thing because there's no way to scale this thing.
Right.
And so and when we the other thing that was, like, interesting was we'd go pitch this idea of, like, using your phone to check out, like, the we got barely any time from customers. But when we pivoted the conversation to talk about, like, "Hey, how do you like your technology more broadly?" And a couple teams emerged. One, that none of them liked their legacy platforms. They're like you could tell it was like oil and water because 'cause they're not, restaurateurs are not technologists
it's like how
and
people feel about
CIOs.
Salesforce today. Yeah.
You're really picking on Salesforce, huh?
Yeah.
Anyways, it was like they didn't love their technology.
Hmm.
The other thing that jumped out was they were using like a lot more technology than I expected. Like a lot of these restaurants, I remember one of our early customers was this place called Finale. It's like the first, I'd say, first or second, maybe like real restaurant. Before that, we got some like food trucks and cafes to get going. And we sat down to have a meeting with them. It's like, hey, I remember a great guy, Chris Kane. And he started off by saying, well, I've got this point of sale. And then we saw like, all the workflows to run the kitchen and the restaurant. And then there's like, well, I've got e-commerce now because like orders come in online. This is 2013. And orders were coming into a fax machine, by the way, right? Nothing was integrated. They had like, well, I have a website, and it was like this old school 1024 by 768 website. I've got like online gift cards, and I have in-store gift cards. I've got this punch card loyalty program. Then I've got like staff scheduling. I've got payroll. I've got like inventory. I've got accounting. It's like a big list. And I was like, "Well, how do you manage all this stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's manually exporting and importing data across systems," right? Like, just to bring it to life, like, you would have, like, imagine, like, it's a busy restaurant, one's in Harvard Square, one's in Back Bay in Boston. And imagine you got a line out the door because at lunch, and you've got, like, orders coming in online. It was less frequent than they are today on a fax. And you got a line out the door, and you gotta rekey the entire order, and imagine it's a big order, right? It's like, makes no sense. And so the thing that the realizations were like, because cloud didn't exist, the technology just hadn't kept up. And there were a couple companies that had that had tried to build, I'd say, more of like a horizontal solution that could work more broadly in many verticals. And like, I think our realization was, let's just go deep on restaurants and let's go nail as many, right, of the restaurants as we can. Like the vision, the mindset was any more food is served, like Toast should be the platform. And that's really what led to the early, at least the beginnings of the product market fit. There's more to the story in terms of, what it really took, but at least the beginnings of product market fit early on.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
So 9 months, nothing's happening.
Mhm.
Then you have conversations like this.
Mhm.
You like start to tune the messaging in a way that starts to make sense to the restaurateurs.
Yeah.
Then you can like go back and start like, like shaping the product to like conform to what they want.
Mhm.
Then you start like getting maybe a couple food trucks, a few more people around. It's still you three?
No, we had so the funding side, maybe even talk about capital.
Sure.
So we'd come out of this company Endeca, as I mentioned. So we're like, well, and there was Steve Papa, who was the founder of Endeca, was like a supporter of us. We'd done good work for him, and so we made a bunch of intros to a bunch of VCs, and maybe long story short, we like couldn't really raise capital until we got Steve Papa to put in the first check. And he said, I'm going to commit 500K, and the 100K showed up in our account. And I said, well, I thought you said 500K. And he said, well, I'm going to give you 500K, 100K at a time, and you also need to approve every hire by me, right? Early on.
Come on.
I think he was trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
In terms of like, in terms of he making sure that he was he'd just been through the journey. Anyways, actually his advice throughout the years, his imprints are all over the company in many ways that really helped us get to where we are today.
That's awesome.
But he so we raised some funding through him. So we actually started to hire people without really any product. I mean, we had this app before that we had built on the side, but then like when we were pivoting to like, going to build this whole platform, it was a much bigger undertaking. And so we had hired we hired Tim, we had a couple early engineers. So we did have some people. Yeah. Yeah, we did have some team members. And I think one of the things, like realizations we did have, was it was not going to be trivial. Like a lot of people, when you go to investors and talk about Toast, they would say like, restaurants don't buy online, they're not tech forward, they go out of business. Like, and also it's like, this seems very heavy. There's a lot to build here. And we were, I think, self-aware enough to realize that there was a lot to build. So we needed some support. And so the other thing we realized was, back to like not being horizontal. We even our first, like I'd say 10 or 20 restaurants, we had like, food trucks and cafes. We had some quick serve, like, restaurants. We had sit down full serve. We had some nicer fine dining style restaurants. We had a bar. We even had a nightclub. I remember there was a place called Flat Top Johnny's, like around MIT, where they had like a bar, and they had like the pool tables. It's like to figure out how to power the pool tables, right? Because they had one platform before in terms of like timing and how many hours you're using it. So there was a lot of these edge cases. In fact, the terminology we use in marketing now in the company, our branding is, it's like the 1,000 little things that make restaurant tech what it is. And like Toast is built for busy restaurants.
And
right?
you're saying just
Yeah.
like within restaurants, there was a million edge cases just across your first 20 customers that you had to basically build into the platform.
And I think that was a deliberate strategy. It wasn't like we were just like, some people might say, what are you doing? Why don't you focus, right? And like go nail this one segment. And I think that was like and there was enough overlap between restaurant types. And our perspective was like, at the end of the day, what was our strategy? It was like, we're going to put people on the ground. In fact, a lot of people were questioning, are you going to put people all over the country in cities? Not, we got people, all over the world in cities. And restaurateurs love the fact that we have sales and service near them, right? And then we said, like, we're going to build this platform that can work universally across these different restaurant types. And then the other thing we realized, like, especially if we make it VC fundable, like, we realized like the business model had to evolve. And so and we're one of the first ones to do this, but like we within restaurants, I think we were, in terms of embedding payments, embedding more of the software, and making the hardware and the service a lot cheaper than these legacy platforms that had like on like upfront costs and such. And so I think those are three things that mattered, was like this cloud platform, Android as the hardware, and then embedded payments to make the business model work. And we said, like, if we're going to hire a sales team, they got to be able to sell not just to a small segment of the restaurant industry, you got to sell across different restaurant types. And so that was part of the deliberate strategy, back to strategy, to like go serve all these different restaurant types and lean into the complexity. We felt like that would actually be an advantage, and it is an advantage for us. Like even as we've actually now expanded into retail, a big part of our strategy is like, we are all about local commerce, like physical brick and mortar stores. And we like the complexity of like a grocery store, for example, or a convenience store or a gas station that has a fuel pump. And so that's really been in our DNA from day one, is to lean into some of that complexity of making local commerce work, starting with restaurants.
Super interesting. How, so you hire the first set of team members, call it 8 to 10 of you, to go build the platform.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And a couple people to help sell too.
A couple of people to help sell.
Yeah.
And so, and you're still riding on that first seed check, basically.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very, very, very. We were in my basement and like back to being frugal.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We were. I mean, we didn't take any salaries, or I forget exact details, but I think we were very, very careful about like burn. We leaned in a little bit more, which has worked out into equity than cash early on with employees, because we really wanted to make that $500K count, because we didn't know if we'd ever have more money. And I remember the first couple of sales reps we hired, they were like kids out of school, and they're like, well, what's the comp plan? Like, actually, this happened years later, because they were on like some base salary of like, I think 40K or something. Yeah. And like, I remember like years later, they came back to me, sat me down. They're like, we found something. It's like 2 years later or a year later, I forget. They're like, we found that salespeople make commissions. But we were very, very frugal early. We had to be, but because we wanted to make sure that we could build as much of this platform, find some early product market fit. And the hard thing was like, even when we got like the first 100K in ARR or so, and we had like maybe 10 or 15 customers, the thing was scaling in our business required more investment. And actually Steve Papa was really helpful there to keep us going, because the funny thing is we got these early customers and it's like, let's go put the pedal down, let's try to scale a little bit. And we were like totally not ready. Like, because our software didn't work offline. Like, so imagine like most SaaS applications, the internet's out, doesn't matter. Restaurants, like internet's out 9 p.m., you need to be able to run the restaurant. So to rebuild a lot of that platform to work offline. Then like our hardware, like I remember like how we need more hardware to deploy all these sites, because there was a lot of customer pull.
And you build the hardware yourself?
No, we were using commodity hardware. It's very hard on 100K checks to build hardware. And so we were buying on Amazon or wherever, like Alibaba, we were buying a lot of hardware. It was just like commodity, Acer, Android, bunch of tablets. We were buying these physical like metal stands. I remember some of the updated, this is back, some of these tablets where instead of having 2 ports, right, like micro USB and USB, like moved to 1 port. And so our solution was like, no, this is not a good solution, was like, well, when you're running the restaurant, you should like plug in the credit card reader, and like when you're at night, you should plug in the power so you can charge it at night. and so the hardware like wasn't ready for scale, right? In fact, I remember one of the stats was like, all the hardware, the first iteration that we launched with, 100% of the hardware would come back within like 180 days or something, because it just wasn't ready for scale. The software didn't work offline. And And then for support, right, it was like we had sales and product, but like we didn't really have any help in this. Like restaurateurs need support with this, with the platform, like 24/7 support. They have an issue at 11 o'clock because tip out's not working. So Google, the support number was like a Google Voice number, right? That just rang for everyone in the company. In fact, maybe I'll share this. There was a early customer, and it was like this busy bar nightclub, and walked me through like this back alley into this club in Boston. I don't know what I was. Yeah, I was a little bit nervous walking in. I sat down with this owner. His name is Billy, and he said like, "Hey, we're not happy with micros. Like, what can you do?" And I told him about like our handhelds because the Android form factor allowed for these mobile devices. You could take orders and payments like at the table, and you can improve your turns and be more successful, more efficient in terms of your turn, and you'll make more money. And he said, "What about support? Like, I'm not happy with the support I'm getting locally." And so I said, "Well, with Toast, we're small, but like we've got great support. We got 24/7 support. We got your back." And so he was smart, and he's like, "What's your website?" And then he goes to the website, and he like calls the number right on the support side.
While you're sitting with him.
Yeah, and my phone starts ringing in my pocket, and so I like muted the phone, and then I was like, okay, I knew how many rings it was before it would go to voicemail. I did not want it to go to voicemail, and I was hoping someone would pick it up. And unfortunately, I had to pick it up, and I told him, I said, "Look, I told you we got great support. I've got your back." And they're still a customer today.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but the point of all this was like we thought we were ready to scale, but like because of the complexity of the hardware,
Right.
the software, the support, like we just really were not ready. I remember having a conversation. We're like, because we were getting customer pull, because people like the customers still liked the fact that it was mobile, it was cloud, it was so much better, and that you could access your business from anywhere, make changes from anywhere. They'd never had access to that. They liked the handhelds. They liked the fact that it was cheaper. Often, if you're a new restaurant, you could get up and running for like under $5K versus spending $50K in some cases or more. And so there was a lot of customer referral from the sales team we had, but I remember sitting down with Steve and Steve. So Steve Fredette was my co-founder, and Steve Papa. And I remember, I think both of them saying like, we need to slow down. Like, we are not ready to put the pedal down. We need to step back. And so we had to like go back and fix a lot of these foundational capabilities. And it's hard, right? Because on the one hand, like you want to keep scaling because revenue growth is so important when you think about like, you know, the culture and like what motivates people in your early, especially you got like going from like 10 customers to 50 to 100. I remember we had this thing, there was like this thermometer, which is like when we get to 100 customers, we're going to have like, it's like, I thought it was something like, we're going to have fun with Aman. It was like one of the things they had because they asked me what it is. I'm like, I'm not sure. We'll have some fun. And so it was hard to slow down, but we had to. And then pick that back up later.
Can you put a finer point on like why revenue growth is so important for early stage companies? Like besides the obvious of like money matters.
I just think it is so important for all sorts of reasons. Like, first of all, you want customer usage. Like it's not just revenue growth, usage of the platform is very, very important, right? I remember early on, asking about pricing was a big topic. I'm like, I don't care about pricing. We just need people using it. You can make the platform cheaper than everybody else. That's fine. Because we need a lot of people using the platform because usage obviously is like fundamental to learning. And so that's like really, really important. Then there was like, okay, if you want people to buy in, you want to recruit talent. One of the first questions is like, do you have traction? Like, tell me about your traction. Right? You want to raise capital. It's like the same conversation, right? And you're like, it's like you're always trying to punch above your weight, right? When you're a startup, you don't have credibility, and you're always trying to figure out how can you punch above your weight. And revenue growth is a good way to really, like, it's like one of the more purest ways to do that, to talk about like the product market fit and like the impact you're having for whatever you're doing. That's why I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree. It's like these companies are so fragile that like one of the ways to almost be like anti-fragile is just to keep moving. Like momentum just feels like such an important like oxygen to the business.
Yeah.
Just momentum.
Yeah.
Engineering momentum, velocity, hiring momentum, customer momentum, revenue, like any way that you can, funding momentum, any way that you can like find momentum in the business.
Yeah.
It's like it's just like the way that I think about it is like a deposit that you can put into the people that are there.
Yeah.
That like it's something is working.
Yeah.
And then like that'll get us to the next milestone.
Yeah.
It's like just little deposits along the way.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think on the inside is it's a lot more chaotic and broken than even it might feel from the outside.
Yeah.
Right. And so people are looking for those mile markers, the validation. Like one of the things I learned, for example, was, Steve and I we had this relationship where we were super close and, we would like debate and discuss strategy or like priorities or like openly. And like we'd be sitting on the floor and now we had like, maybe 25, 30, 40 people. And people would be like, what's going on? Like, why are you guys fighting? It's like, no, we're not. So we learned the hard way. Like, if we've got disagreements to work through, we're going to go away so that people aren't distracted by what we're doing.
That's hilarious. How long did it take to get to your first million of ARR?
So we launched the product summer of 2013. And
the broader product.
The broader product. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. The first thing was fall of 2012.
Okay.
And there's actually a pretty good product market fit. And like we were able to fix this stuff relatively quickly. So by the end of, I don't remember exactly when, but I remember the end of 2014, we were like approaching 2 million ARR.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
And had you raised the A at that point?
So Steve had leaned in and he had gone a little bit beyond the initial check and had given us some additional funding through like, I think convertible debt or something. I forget that would convert in the next round. So we had some more capital available. We hadn't raised, I think we raised our first, I hope I don't get this wrong, our first institutional round, I think it was like late 2015, end of 2015.
And you went 2 to what the next year?
What's that formula that people talk about?
Like
T2,
triple, double.
Whatever.
These days,
that's
people
not good enough anymore. It's not good enough anymore. Yeah.
So you went like 2 to 6.
Yeah, something like that. I think we were. I don't remember exactly, but we had the thing that was important was like we had really good product market fit because in fact you'd interview people and it was execs. And like, I remember one time I was sitting with this exec and they're like asking about like, what's your strategy for like nonlinear scale? And I've come to appreciate some of what they meant a lot better now. And I was like, it's working. Like this linear scale. We need to make this thing first work and like scale the thing. So the model that had really good product market fit from very early on. But I think the challenge for us was more about like scaling the organization. Like, so I think first we talked about like we weren't ready to scale because of the tech.
Yeah.
Then I think when we started to hire people, this is like, middle of 2014, and we grew from like doing 20 people to 50 people, something like that. This is like the classic, maybe founder. First of all, we'd never really managed at scale before.
Yeah.
Neither, not any of us. And we were, trying to do it all ourselves. And so it was actually like we didn't have the foundations to scale. Like how do you, like very basic things, like how do you think about hiring people? How do you assess people? How do you onboard people? How do you like communicate with the organization? How do you make sure, like how do you think about like what does it mean to be a toaster and like the culture and the values? And actually that was like one of the low points for us where like I feel like, at least for me, where I kind of knew like at the end of 2014 that even though we had like customer pull, we weren't really like we hadn't figured it out. Like it wasn't really working because our execution wasn't like what it needed to be. And I think part of it was like when
like your company building execution.
Yeah. And I think like the first like one of the like blind spots for me was when you got the first 20 people, 10 people in the company, maybe it was all people we'd known in our network because we knew they were good. And when you grow and scale and try to hire fast, like it's not this is like you hear proverbially, right? The founders or whatever, the CEOs interviewing a lot of people early on. We just didn't do a lot of that well. And so we were seeing that in our business where like you just like simple things like you look at the distribution performance in the company, like you could see huge differences. And so we sat down and that's actually when we brought in pretty early on, like 2015, I think, February maybe, we brought in Chris, who we had worked with at Endeca. He would scale their customer success at the CS org at Endeca. And Steve and I talked about this and Steve's recommendation was it'll really help you to have a leader who's scaled before to help you scale. And you can imagine, like, that's that's tricky because you're like, you're like, are you going to lose control? Like, what does that mean? And we did do that. And
what did you bring him in as?
CEO
To run the company.
to run the company, yeah. And so, and I think that Steve and I were presidents, and I think it was it was probably the phase where like I think the closest we came to like maybe before that, I would say, to like it not really working out because the business wasn't really scaling effectively. Like the financials were getting worse as we were adding more salespeople. The customer sentiment wasn't great. Like, like I remember one of the conversations we talked about what's your NPS? We're measuring it, and just didn't have the right feedback loops back in the organization for what needed to get built, right? And it's amazing. Like one of the things that was really positive was Chris actually, like one of his superpowers was like to bring people together. And he had scaled before. And so he like, did a really nice job of like both leaving his imprint on the company, but also it wasn't about his show. It was about all of us. I remember when we were raising one of our later rounds, one of the concerns they had was like, we think the company's got really good, bones and economics. Fundamentally, this was a couple years later. We're not sure if there's one CEO or 5 CEOs, because we all, and I actually think in retrospect, that was his superpower, is like bringing the team together. And, I remember we put in, like, we took some of our top employees and, in retrospect seems obvious, but like we asked them like, what makes Toast tick? And we had them put together our mission and our purpose and our values and our, we put some basic infrastructure in place for how we hire and onboard. And that made a huge difference. Like that was, I'd say, of course, there were some strategy elements to it too, but I'd say more so than strategy, it was about execution at Toast, whether it's building the platform, right, initially. Like a lot of people wanted to build this platform. Like I think John and Steve and team like built a platform that actually worked in these complex environments and worked well. Um, it was about scaling the team and the culture, which I think was another area where it's easier said than done. Like it's, like naturally, like humans organize, the bigger the group gets, it's harder to organize. Because when you're smaller, you can be like, you're not working on something together. Like we're working out together. I'm helping you. We're working through stuff. And as you get bigger, it's like, okay, like you can, communication is really important. And I'm learning this as I've stepped into the CEO role 2.5 years ago. But like, it is much harder to build culture as you scale. Right. And, and so it's really like, I think we did a lot of the hard stuff really well. And then of course, on the strategy front, as you see success with customers, the customers lead you, right? And it's in terms of like, we started off with this core point of sale application. We added, payments to make the business model work. Then from payments, we saw capital was an opportunity because a lot of the existing legacy providers had capital products. And in fact, sometimes customers wouldn't switch because you didn't have a capital product as part of our payments. We added a lot of the e-commerce capability like online ordering, gift, and loyalty and CRM. We bought a company for payroll and scheduling, separate companies for payroll and scheduling. We bought a company for back office inventory and AP automation. And of course, we continue to build organically in the platform and have added a lot more. But a lot of that, I'd say, on the strategy within restaurants, there's more we're doing. But within restaurants, a lot of it is customer driven. And I think that's worked quite well for us.
How long was the CEO that you brought in CEO for?
Long time. 2015 through 2023.
That worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we wouldn't be here without Chris, for sure.
And then you took over almost 3 years ago?
2.5. 2 years ago, actually. 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah. Through end of 23. So 24, 25.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's like old school, like this idea of like bringing in a CEO. Like it's like, there's like actually a lot of success stories that don't get told very often.
Yeah.
And, now the kind of zeitgeist in Silicon Valley is just like, you would never hire a CEO, and what's funny is like, there's many ways that you've gone against the conventional wisdom, that being one of them. And it must be, I don't know, surreal now, like everybody wants to build Toast for X, and I wonder, like, when did, like, it probably was obvious to you and the folks inside the company at some point, and then there was probably a lag from when it was obvious to you to then when it became obvious to everybody else?
Yeah.
Like, how long was that lag?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Like, when did all the, like, fancy VCs start piling on?
Yeah. We, for us, I remember early on, like, like, even very early on, actually, Steve was like, we got to get to 10,000 restaurants, and we had like 10 restaurants. And then when we started to see good product market fit in a few cities, because, the strategy was city by city. When we saw the fundamentals of like what it takes, what we were doing in Chicago or Miami or Boston, those are the first 3 cities we launched. That's when it was kind of obvious, like, because people ask all these questions about like, what does it mean to really scale? Because we were so small, these early 3 cities were early, but like, it was very obvious from the sales cycle, from the customer pull and the customer value prop, that like, it was very obvious to me and others, like, what we needed to do was to scale this first and foremost as quickly as possible. And so we had a lot of conviction, I'd say, right in like 2015, 16, especially when we got the found back to the scaling elements, right? Um, and then it probably took us, a couple years, maybe 2017, 18. Um, once you start to see, um, the market's so fragmented. So like even the first couple of years, it was hard to know, like we were in a market of many providers. But I think when people saw like our business, right, and they saw the unit economics and they saw the customer satisfaction, the customer pull, the customer
Mhm,
interviews, like, I think that's when it started to become bigger. I
mhm.
remember though, like, for me, it was like when I started to get texts from some friends and family. It's like, oh, I wanted this restaurant. It's using toast. I remember that was like an initial, like, oh, we're doing something right. And then we'd get, a lot of input and feedback on, how to make the experience better. And then I think, like the Toast for X was actually one of those moments. I remember some presentation we'd gotten from somewhere, from some VC or so, I forget, saying like they're trying to build Toast for X, like to your point. And I was like, oh damn, we made it. I remember talking to Steve about this. Like people are talking about us, right? As like the
Totally,
category creator or whatever it may be. Yeah,
totally.
yeah, yeah,
Super cool.
yeah.
What did you, what are the things that when the new CEO came on board,
Uh huh.
like, as things were broken and then needed to be fixed,
Yeah,
what were some of the early things that you observed him do that now in hindsight were like, "No shit, we should have done that"?
yeah. I think it's like some of it was just slow down and speed up, right? Sometimes like maybe it's a part of who I am, but I'm always trying to like maybe too focused sometimes in the here and now, right? So like even as like whether you're a CEO or like you're a manager or a coach or a leader in a department, you got to step back. Maybe it's obvious. You got to build the systems, right? To actually think about what does it mean to build and scale the company. You've got to build. You got to shape the organization. So you got to think about like, okay, how do I think about our culture and our values? Back to what I talked about. Um, how do we work to actually make these things true? Because that's about putting them on a wall, where you got to actually make these things true. You got to think about hiring leadership. Like, okay, what are the people that you need around you and, to help you scale? And and then I think, the other thing that I think that I'd say that all that I think many people can do. But the thing that I think, and Chris and Steve both do this very well, that I've learned a lot from over the years is, um, and it's actually funny, like it's not natural to me. Like I can be sometimes I can push, and sometimes, I could remind myself I got to be direct and be kind in terms of like how to push people. Um, but they like had this, like both of them had a real good superpower, real superpower, I'd say, of really bringing um, the team together in a way that was, um, and I think some of it because of who they are, like they're just good people, and it comes through. And like Chris would, for example, like, he cared deeply about customer success, and he would take tons of escalations himself, and he would listen to the calls. And like one of the things we built in the culture early on was like, it's still one of our values is we're all in customer success. Like be on the front lines to really understand. Like I was much more focused on like how do we grow and get customers and revenue, and like I would be very happy to take the next sales call
Mhm,
with someone because I felt like I was, you know, I was maybe the best salesperson. I'm telling the strategy and the story
mhm,
and the product. And Chris was like really good complimentary and focusing on customer experience, and Steve, of course, on innovation. So that really worked well too, and then to the three of us. But I think the superpower, if I had to pick one thing, Like even today, our number one value, I'd say still that resonates like is the one team value and how we work together. And to do that, you have to live those things, right? And I think they early on like were really focused on the small things. Like, as a leader, right, you've got to do the small things well and the big things well. And they were like really good at doing the small things well in like a genuine way, not a BS way, because you have to check a box to do it.
Any like habits or rituals, routines, things that you observed them do that
Mhm.
you thought were instrumental in bringing the team together?
I think the one thing that like, I always saw was we were all like in it together, right? And when there was adversity and challenge and learning, it was always in the spirit of like how do we make this better? Like how do we? It's not about like who's right. It's about what's right. It's not about like keeping politics and some of that stuff out when you're scaling. And I think like I don't know if there's a specific ritual. The biggest thing I think Chris was like really worked really hard. Like he was the first one there, first thing in the morning. Like, those things matter. I think Steve also really like led from the front, right? And um, and so being present for the team, being there, being like outworking, like leading from the front again, back to like outworking everyone. Those are things that really, really matter. And and I think the other thing I'd say is, like, I don't know if I'm giving a good answer for, like, the ritual, I don't have any specific thing, but I saw them spend a lot more time on the team than I was maybe spending time on earlier. That was, like, one of the learnings for me was you've gotta be able to think about it's like your job moves from being, like, the one who's doing like, helping close that deal or helping figure out the product market why this feature is not working as you expect, like, or it may be to, like, helping shape the organization and getting in the right people, and even basic things like and maybe this is obvious, but, like, what does it mean to be a good manager, right? And, like, building, like, it's about the what and the how and working through, like, basic the foundations because we're hiring a lot of people out of the restaurant industry. In fact, even now, we're really proud of the fact that we hire a lot of people out of the industry that have empathy for restaurants and the
Mm.
restaurateurs. And so we have to teach them, like, what does it mean to work in a corporate environment, and what does it mean to be an effective manager, and, like, I'm a big believer now that, like, a good manager, number one thing that you have to do is you have to be a good coach. Because at the end of the day, if you're not an effective coach and you can't dig into the team and do their job with them and help them, like, none of the other stuff really matters.
Mm.
You don't have credibility, right? And so, like, those are the things I saw, I'd say them kinda help model.
Companies, well, 20, how many employees?
6,500.
6,500.
Yeah.
Big. My God, that's a lot of people. Um, Now what? $20 billion company, 6,500. You're the CEO. It's been 2 years in the
Mhm.
saddle.
Yep.
I'm sure you're gonna say something about like the world is changing and AI is gonna change all of our lives.
Yes.
Um, I'm curious, like, what is that? Like, and it's ironic, like in some ways, like restaurants are an anti-AI. Like restaurants are a
Uh-huh.
way to just like connect with somebody.
Yeah.
And like you still got to power the restaurants and deliver good technology and do all those things. But
Right.
fundamentally, the reason you go to a restaurant is actually just to like connect with somebody.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, I think one of the things that back to like this superpower that got us here, which was like vertical focus on restaurants and specifically restaurants in the US and specifically SMB restaurants. We had some mid-market chains, but not truly the enterprise. And so the good thing was that focus has got us to where we are because of whether it's how we build and sell and service and such. The challenge is like, okay, if you truly wanna build a company that is at the next level of scale, right? And one of the key questions that Toast I remember the IPO was like, "What is the TAM really?" And, like, "How big is the opportunity really?" And so, one of the things we did
Mhm.
was, this is like in 2021 maybe? I forget exactly, something 21. We brought in, 'cause we'd, grown and scaled up, and, like, one of the things we were feeling was like, "Hey, we've kinda lost some of our entrepreneurial spirit." I'm sure many companies that, and I like this phrase, which is like, all entrepreneurs wanna build enterprises someday, but all enterprises also wanna be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so we started this program called New Ventures, and it was actually, like, paying homage to how we started to begin with, which was in this team called Special Operations, which is all about innovating and finding product market fit, and it was largely like we wanted to bring in entrepreneurs into the company, and often, like, pair worked really well, actually, like, of folks that maybe has considered starting a company and maybe hadn't found product market fit, or people that we knew that we think would have been good. We built out these teams within Toast with, like, literally, like, it was like, isolate the teams, give them a comp plan that's very focused on their business, and, um and, we launched through that a bunch of products that have been very meaningful to the company. So we launched Toast Retail, which we'll talk about in a bit. Long term, like, I'm a big believer that retail opportunity for Toast could actually be bigger than restaurants. Um, we launched a bunch of guest-facing products like reservations and waitlist and this Toast Local app that has become part of that. We launched products for catering and events. We launched an advertising product. And not everything worked, right? Like anything else of these early stage things, but actually a really good success hit rate. And what that's allowed us to do is just bring back a little bit more of, like, a good balance. And you need this, I think, in any company. You need folks that can think about scale. There are lots of leaders that are really good at thinking about scale. And it's really important, by the way, because, like, you learn the hard way if you don't do those things well. That, like, the technology and systems, for example, like, internally can get in the way, right? But you also need folks that, like, are actually like the entrepreneur, that wanna build 0 to 1 within your company and wanna find product market fit and know how to do that, 'cause it is different. Like, you don't build for scale early on. And so that was, I think, like, a real unlock for us to start to open up the opportunity. And so what we're about now is, we certainly wanna continue to grow and scale in US restaurants, and I can talk about some of the things that I think
What
are
percentage of restaurants are you
in
the US?
in the US, about 20%.
20%.
20%, yeah,
And at
like
the IPO, what percentage were you in?
5.
5%. And so the question was, like, around the TAM was just like, hey, like, you know, let's just say you get 50% market share someday.
Yeah.
Like, even 50%, like, how big of a company is that gonna be at 50% if you just stay in restaurants in the US?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think specifically SMB restaurants in the US, not just
SMB
not even
restaurants.
enterprises,
Exactly.
right?
SMB restaurants
Yeah.
in the US.
Yeah. And so, um, we, um, we the if you think about, like, what that allowed us to do back to is, like, really start thinking about how do you innovate, right? And continue to bring back, like, some of the early, work that allows you to see, like, can you find product market in other places? So retail, for example, was an interesting one where you think of, like, restaurants in the US, spend about $1 trillion spent in restaurants in the US, give or take. I'm using round numbers. But, like, if you go look at the US economy and look at GDP and then look at, like, personal consumption, more just maybe very high broadly, it's like, consumer spending is like 70% of the economy. So 20 trillion plus. And so our team actually went back and analyzed some of this and said, well, wait a minute, like, there's at least 7 or 8 trillion of spend where, and it's pretty bold. They're like, Toast should be relevant because it's all about local commerce. Like, what does that mean? It's like, well, grocery stores, gas stations, convenience stores, merchandising, clothing stores, like all these businesses that are not about e-commerce, they're about in-store physical commerce. And not the, like, heavily regulated stuff like HIPAA compliance stuff, not pharmacies and hospitals and all that. But and we so that combined with, like, some of the customer pull through COVID, where restaurants want to do more retail just to survive, got this business off the ground. And it's like our one of probably the fastest growing business in the company.
And are you
And
starting SMB retail?
SMB retail.
And then you're gonna move up market there?
We have yeah. So we have the strategy from a growth standpoint is retail.
SMB restaurants, go up market to the restaurants,
Yeah.
US and then go global.
Yep.
Then SMB retail, maybe follow a similar pattern.
Exactly.
Doing retail.
Exactly. Core enterprise, international, and retail are the three growth vectors when it comes to location growth. And of course, like you said, there's intersections there because there's enterprise retail locations, there's international retail locations. It's actually funny. I was in London last year and I walked into this place. And it's called the Supermarket of Dreams, and it was on Toast. I was like, cool. You started to see, like, signal even internationally of this. But that business, back to strategy, it's like dramatically expand the TAM, like 10x or more. And, like, it's not just about, like, these expanding it into the categories we're in now, but it's actually like having a mindset to say, like, we're not going to just power local restaurants, right? Or neighborhood restaurants. We're going to power entire neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And it's a bold vision, but I actually think the reason we have a right to win play is, at the end of the day, like, when we built the restaurant platform, it was all about leaning into complexity. And it's the same thing as you go into retail. some of these categories were like grocery is very complicated. You know, bottle shops have lots of very specific needs, and what you hear from a lot of these folks is they value the fact that with something like toast, like I was talking to a, a merchant of ours the other day, a customer of ours, and they said they love the fact that with the toast platform, they've got like a grocery store and they've got a coffee shop within it, and they've got some light retail. And they like the fact that you can use one platform versus three or two, and then you can like little things like and the tipping. They don't want tipping in the grocery store obviously, but they want it in the restaurant, and they want the reporting to be in one place across both the systems, and the ability to manage it from one place. And so we even like managing by the way inventory on a smartphone on the floor without having to take the system down, because a lot of what these people are using are still these legacy systems, actually very similar to what we saw with restaurants back in 2013. And so it's like we believe the future is like vertical. It's not horizontal. And as you think about these sub verticals, it's like brick by brick, you got to build the capabilities necessary to support. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much innovation you have on top, right? Whether it's AI, we can talk about that, but you've got to make sure you have to make sure you solve the operational complexity and the workflows they need to run their businesses. And so that's like the strategy in terms of location expansion. And I think because point of sale, again, there's a lot to it. Even going to enterprises and international markets, like now we have brands like Marriott and Hilton, Applebee's and Denny's and a bunch of other brands. And there's a lot there too to actually support. Like, what does it mean to support a large chain versus an SMB restaurant? Supporting restaurants in London or Sydney or Toronto. And
I like to ask all the consumer CEOs this. When you go into a restaurant, like I asked the Whoop and the ordering CEOs this too.
Yeah.
When you go into a restaurant, do you try and figure out what they're using?
I at this point I pretty much know pretty quickly. I can just tell.
How?
I can just see. I can see
But you look.
Of course, yeah.
Every time, no matter what.
Every time. In fact, one of the other rituals we've got is I don't know it's every time, but I try to do it most of the time. Where if I am sitting at dinner and I don't know the place, I'll try to ask the server like 2 questions, like or server and if there's a manager, if I can get him, I'll ask him like how they like the product and how they like the service, because those are both things that are very important to restaurateurs.
And your family's like, oh my God, here we go. Can't even have one meal.
Yeah.
How much do you travel?
Twice a month, maybe once.
Nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy.
So like as you go international, it hasn't constrained you have not had to. The demand on your time has not been through travel in that way.
No. I think a lot of it is like bringing in good leaders who've helped us, who've seen that before, and so it's not that of course you want. Like I haven't been to Australia. We've just launched in Australia about 6 months ago or so, but I've spent time in the markets that we have customers, and but I don't have to be there every day.
Yeah.
So that's one part of the strategy is like expand the TAM. Like, we instead of being in 160,000 customers, like we firmly believe like there's no reason why, if you think long term, Toast can power millions of locations. The second piece is, and it goes back to within restaurants. It goes back to maybe a little bit on like how we started, and some of our consumer ambitions long term. But what's the hardest thing about a restaurant going out to eat?
The hardest thing, okay,
sit down restaurant for start. We'll start there.
Get a reservation would be like number one.
No, you've got the table, but like operationally, like what's the hardest thing? What's the most annoying part of like the restaurant experience?
Oh, like if you're running it or if you're a consumer?
You're a guest. Yeah.
If you're a guest.
Yeah.
Well, if you're with somebody that's indecisive, picking what food you want.
Yeah.
Making sure you get the right dish that you want. That's probably that would be my guess.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. But the one thing that we hear consistently is just like when you're done, you just want to leave.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I always sit at the bar, because I'm trying to get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like one of the things I do, for example, is I try to like give the card earlier.
Okay, I do that every time, but the problem is then like, I'm sure your wife is now habituated to it, but if you're with somebody else, the first thing they think is like, oh, he's trying to get us out of here. In some ways I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
That's the point.
I don't do it. So it's fair. I only do it with people I know. Fair.
I always do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And so one of the things that we want to fix is that experience. So imagine, right, you get a table or you join a wait list. You got a card on file. So Toast Now, just launched that. And so when you go to Toast restaurant, you book through Toast Tables, soon with Resi, and Talk and others, you're gonna just be able to walk out. So I think that does a couple things, because if you know Joubin and you
That's cool.
yeah, yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah. It's a real problem, right? A real pain point. Back to
I mean, it's not dissimilar from, like, there used to be a day where you'd, like, check out of a hotel
or cab, right? Think
and
Uber.
then you just leave. Like,
Right.
that makes so much sense to me.
Right,
That makes
right,
so much sense to me.
right. So that's something, and what's powerful about that is
That makes so much sense to me.
if you connect the guest profile. The problem with most restaurants is that guests are not anonymous so often, right? Because you don't know a lot about them. And so if you know the guest profile in the point of sale, the thing that's running the restaurant before the earlier versus at the end of the transaction, you can now do things like, you can personalize the guest experience, right? You, because Toast has so much data, like we know, like, and actually on any given menu, we probably know what you're going to order with like very high accuracy, because people are creatures of habits. You can start to another feature that, like, I think maybe more of a niche feature, but I've got 2 young kids. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and it'd be awesome sometimes when we're busier to just be able to have the food ready sooner when we show up. And so imagine when you get a table, the system, you can pre-order, and when you check in, it fires to the kitchen so that the drinks and the chicken nuggets, or in my case, my son loves bacon and
Very
fries,
cool.
right?
You're
And so
speaking my language.
yeah,
Efficiency.
yeah.
You're speaking my language.
And then the last piece is like the personalization at the table.
I will be a beta test anywhere you
Yeah,
want me to be.
yeah.
I will do
Awesome.
it.
We'll definitely
I'm
get you on this.
I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in.
yeah. The other thing I think a lot about is, like, remember cable TV back in the day?
Yeah.
Versus Netflix today?
Yeah.
Like, Netflix, turn it on, it just kinda knows what you wanna watch. It knows based on your history, and if YouTube TV does a nice job of this too now. Like, why shouldn't that be in restaurants? Why shouldn't they know why shouldn't the server, of course, know your name, right? And then know what on this menu you're gonna care about, like what your allergies are, what your preferences are, and then use that to actually recommend stuff. And so this we call that, like, internally, I like to use the word cheers experience, back to that show back in the day where everybody knows your name. And so, like, that's one area where I think if we can move the needle, like, on efficiency and on the experience, like, it's like said another way, like, if you were building a restaurant today, imagine no restaurants existed, we wouldn't build it like this given the tech we have today.
Totally.
Right? Like, you wouldn't be like, oh, like, someone shows up with a piece of paper, then you give them some plastic, they come back with them the piece of paper, you sign it, they go back to the system, enter in some thing that you typed in, that you wrote in. And so that, I think, is one opportunity area we're very focused on. Again, and the focus here is to help restaurants with, better turns, better guest experience, higher check sizes. The second thing, and this one's harder, is I always have I've struggled with the fact that restaurants are one of the few categories where there's, like, no concept of, like, how to think about yield. You think about, like, most places, like, think of, like, I've seen hotels or airlines, or pick your thing. There's, like, this concept of, like, some demand supply matching happening. And I think in restaurants, it's reasonable that it's harder, but there's so many little things you can do to help match demand and supply, right? And they do it, like, in like in analog ways, right? Like, oh, it's happy hour to help at times they're not as busy. But the thing that doesn't exist is, like, something that says, let's go look at your demand patterns. Let's go look at the weather. Let's go look at events that are happening locally. There's, like, an AI, a lot of this, I think, it gets easier. And let's help you generate the right set of offers to actually optimize yield. Because some people, like when I was in college, I used to go to this place called Poorhouse. You get like $2 burgers. And so for some folks, like, they care deeply about the value. And um, and in fact, when they come and come, this is like Groupon's promise back, and they've tried it once, they may love it and come back and say, actually, it's so good. I've never tried it before. I want to come back. And then there are other people who are not as price sensitive, and, like, there's no technology to help these restaurants just get a little bit more incremental yield. And, like, I look at, like, a restaurant and say, like, anytime you've got slots open, what are ways in which we can fill those, whether it's for delivery or pickup or in store? Because they've got all these fixed costs, right? Like, restaurants, like this is like, I don't know if it's exactly right, but directionally it's correct, which is restaurants are, sub 10% margin business where every incremental order is like, 80% margin. And so that's, I think, another area
Hmm.
where tech can, I think, play a role to help restaurants just be smarter about helping fill their seats.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think the other area that back to you asked about AI, and you were like, "Hey, what are we doing with?"
Sorry,
Yeah,
on the every incremental order being over is at least 80% more. Is that because the 10% or less is a fixed cost that has already been basically capitalized, and so any new person that comes in
yeah.
is just looks like a software business margin?
That's very few businesses that can pull that off.
That's interesting. I've
Yeah,
never thought about it that way.
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right, you got rent, your team's already there.
Yep.
You've got food that's gonna go out bad if you don't use it often, not always, but often. And you've got all these, you're trying to all the costs that you have in the business and, like, to incrementally fill that next seat
Yeah, that
is
makes
just
sense.
all about, yeah. And there's no, like, it just drives me, like, I just don't understand why. It's like, maybe there's a good reason why there isn't, but why there's not any technology to enable some of this. And my gut is because there's like it's like a fragmented SMB market. That's why, I think, fundamentally, is in especially in the SMB space. And so,
Hmm.
and actually that's part of our AI. Back to you were asking about, like, what's the AI strategy? So I think it's a if you for me, the AI strategy for restaurants starts with these are SMB restaurateurs, and often they're dealing with, like, their next curveball just to keep the restaurant open and successful, right? People didn't show up to work, they're like their hood's not working, they're like just basically player coach for their locations often, trying to make sure that things run well. And it's actually really hard. Like, in fact, one of the it's like maybe obvious, but really hard business. Takes a lot of heart
Hmm.
to keep these restaurants open
Hmm.
and, day after day, and, like, these consistency of experience that, all these restaurants we love, we think about, like, going back and get these amazing experiences. The amount of energy and work it takes to do it. That's why restaurants are really hard to scale into chains, like, because doing it well at the in the SMB space is really, really hard work. It's like, work that they do out of passion. And so, often when you give them a lot of technology, for a lot of them, not always, but a lot of them are like, it can easily get overwhelming. You're
Hmm.
like, "Hey, there's all this tech that I don't have the time."
Hmm.
And so the types of tech that works really well is like stuff that, like, you just kinda set it and forget it and just
Hmm.
works in the background, like online ordering, driving demand, right? Or your point of sale, like operating your restaurant. Um, and and then the other thing that you see is a lot of these folks, a lot of restaurateurs are not able to leverage, um, the intelligence and the data that the platform has to make good, smarter decisions. And so they've got, like, lots of folks that they'll hire fractionally
Hmm.
often. It'll be like a fractional marketer. They'll hire a fractional, like, accountant, a fractional, like, person that's doing their tax and their payroll. And I think fundamentally when it comes to the customer, that is like what we think the opportunity is long term. And the way we're going about it is step one is we've got this thing called Toast IQ, which is, I think, not that different than ChatGPT, but with our data, all of our data. And so what you can do is you can go in and query this thing, ask any question you want. You can make changes to the back end of Toast. And so people like the fact that it's like it's been one of the fastest adopted products because it's makes the platform accessible. Like, you have support questions,
Hmm.
we're doing about half our support through it now, or through the support agent. We are getting the
Did you build or buy the support agent?
we bought it. We partner with somebody. Yeah. So we have a and we're still figuring it out. We are building a lot of the. I mean, we're in terms of, like, we're still using all these foundation models
Yeah.
for a lot of it, anyways, right? Even if we're building. And then, but for the support, we have we're using some software
Hmm.
off the shelf, but it's still we want to make the experience as native as it can
Yeah,
be,
yeah,
right?
cool.
And so, what people like the vision and the strategy is one, you can use Toast, and so I had to go find, like, how to do something, like how do you 86 an item, like it's not available, or how do you revamp some parts of the menu, or where maybe I can do it with this GPT interface, right?
Yep.
And then the other piece of it is getting, like, I was talking to a restaurateur the other day. They said, it's like a coffee shop, in Wellesley, and they were saying, love the fact that with Toast, that you can see these patterns where it's like an alerts on things like, who are the best employees that they can give a spot bonus to, or like
Yep.
they added some incremental menu items to their menu. What does that do to throughput? Those are things you couldn't do before. And so, and by the way, that's actually also what I use personally. Like one of the things I love about like, ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever it may be, is like whenever I want to build custom data views, I'm not a Power Excel user. And it's like just do it. And it's like really amazing how quickly you can generate the exact view you want.
Yep.
And so custom data views, alerts, and then long term, like with AI, I think the vision is if you believe, I don't know how far we are, but like if you really believe in this like agentic vision coming up sooner rather than later in terms of like fully starting to do some of this work, then there's all these areas where restaurateurs don't get to that work anyways themselves. And so being intelligent about marketing and back to the yield comment we talked about earlier, helping them with their back office and accounting. I can't tell you how many restaurateurs I've talked to that don't really understand their P&L because they are getting their books closed 20 days after the month is over, right? And then of course on payroll and tax, there's a lot of complexity as well. So there's a bunch of areas where we think we can leverage AI to like maybe some humans in the loop to start to automate away some of that work.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited that you're so excited. There's plenty ahead of you.
Yeah.
This is why everybody wants to build the Toast for X.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of greenfield in front of you.
Yeah.
Are you hiring?
Yes.
Are you hiring?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hiring. In fact, I was looking at the numbers for this year yesterday, actually, and we're hiring in across the board. We're hiring in product and engineering, in support, in go-to-market, G&A, some key leadership hires.
When you hear the word grit, what do you think of?
I was thinking about this. Like for me, the word grit, like one of the things I've always loved is whenever it's like people question or doubt, like I always had this mentality of like, no, we're going to do whatever it takes. And it's not, of course, doesn't always work. Whatever it takes might not be good enough. But that mentality of like the passion, the perseverance, the resilience of saying, you want to go accomplish something hard. We are like, the reason we're going to succeed is we will do whatever it takes. And I like that mindset when it comes to grit.
I appreciate this, man. I'm glad we got to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joubin.
That's it for now. If you liked the episode, please leave us a review or go back into the archives where we've done more than 200 episodes with some fantastic folks. This podcast is a Kleiner Perkins production, and I'm Joubin. Thanks for listening.